Target St. Louis Volume 1 is about post-World War II during the Cold War era. The military conducted secret chemical testing on the most vulnerable population of St. Louis. It's told through the eyes of survivors, people that were children at the time, and now they're in their late, mid-70s, and they just want to get this story out.
Kinloch was Missouri's first black incorporated city in the entire state of Missouri. It was one of the largest all-black communities in the country. It was regarded as the Harlem of the Midwest. There were only a few parts of the city that we could live anyway.
Exactly.
So Kinloch was that community, and we made a place here with the little resources that we had, and then you come and tell us, okay, you're not making the best use of this area, so we're just going to force you to go somewhere else.
Welcome to St. Louis in Tune with Arnold Stricker and Mark Langston, where we size up current and historic events involving people, places, and things in areas such as the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, health, history, housing, humor, justice, and sports. Our weekly podcast originates from and connects the gateway city to our country's current cultural fabric and lives. Starting tonight, there are some films that are going to be put on by Cinema St. Louis, and we have two directors in studio, Damian D. Smith, who's director of Target St. Louis Volume 1, and Alana Marie, who's director of the Kinloch Doc. They're both here, and I want to welcome you both to St. Louis in Tune.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Now, we're going to bounce back and forth.
I love y'all energy, by the way.
We have everybody sign the wall who's been interviewed, just not on our show, but here at the studio.
Okay. I'm checking out my spot.
Both of them talk a little bit about what they've done. I know Damian has to leave at the bottom of the hour, and so we're going to probably focus on him a little bit more, and then Alana in the second half of the show. And to give a little intro about Damian, you might have seen him on the television show Snowfall or The Purge, where he's been a recurring guest star. That's FX and the USA Networks. Also has done films. He's done theater, has multiple awards. And he's played one of my favorite historical characters, Dred Scott. Yeah. You are right in my lane with that. I love that. Yeah. And he's a St. Louis native.
Yes, Dred Scott.
He's
Dred
back
Scott
from
case.
New York, and he's here to talk to us about his movie.
Target St. Louis Volume 1. Yes.
Tell us about it.
I'll tell you about it. Okay, sure, no problem. Target St. Louis Volume 1 is about post-World War II during the Cold War era. The military conducted secret chemical testing on the most vulnerable population of St. Louis. It's told through the eyes of survivors, people that were children at the time, and now they're in their late, mid-70s, and they just want to get this story out. And back in the day when these trucks used to come by spraying for pesticides and things like that, okay, so in those cases, it was zinc, cadmium sulfide, and a lot of other elements that we revealed in the
dioxin.
Exactly. That we revealed in Target St. Louis Volume 1 even more. So that's what was happening. The government has admitted that they were doing testing, and they said they were putting together a defensive weapon just in case Moscow attacked a city. So they said it was an aerosol spray study. So they were going to release this cloud of smoke. This was the story they said. They were going to release this cloud of smoke to protect American cities from Russian bombers came over and dropped bombs. But come to find out through the research and do everything, it seems like they were putting together a offensive weapon to attack Moscow just in case. Again, this is post-World War II. There's a lot of things going on. They grabbed a lot of scientists from over there post-World War II, and they needed something to do. And they tested on, again, like the most vulnerable population in St. Louis. So this story is told through these survivors. Because back then, it was like the boogeyman. It was these people, these kids talking about the boogeyman story, and they see these people in astronaut suits walking around, spraying things, and coming out of the back of vans and top of buildings and things like that. And little did they know they were being subjected to testing without their knowledge.
And you found some pretty severe evidence that the government was implicated in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And chemical companies also.
Yeah, there's a few organizations and companies in St. Louis that was aware, was given a heads up, but then also part of the situation. And we revealed this in Target St. Louis Volume 1. We go more in depth of what happened. Then also we go more in depth with the story of these people, because there were several things that happened. They're physical, mental. There's a lot of things that took place that affected our people.
Wow. And you interviewed residents of Pruitt-Igoe who were impacted by this,
Yep.
right?
They're not just residents of Pruitt-Igoe, but residents of the community.
Right.
Because, again, it's an aerosol spray study, so that
Right.
goes in the air and it spreads around. But Pruitt-Igoe was the main factor in which they targeted this zone because of the population, and then also the conditions that they were left on. They were the people, the people in this area, the most vulnerable, and they were underrepresented by their local
Right.
politicians that was put in place to protect them from things like this. So with this documentary, we want to examine people. They were failed on so many different levels, not just the obvious ones that we know about, the predators of the situation, but then there were protections that should be in place that's supposed to protect people like that. But again, that's why we go into more of the history of the neighborhood at the top. The first act of the documentary is to show you how these conditions were put in place for people to come in and be predators on this vulnerable population.
Linked that a little bit with the Tuskegee experiments and what was going on. Discuss that a little bit
Very
about
much so.
how you did that.
The link of the Tuskegee experiments, which is sad that we came about to knowing about this thing, is that these were happening concurrent at the same time. So what was happening is that our government had two tests happening on the most vulnerable population of the United States happening concurrently, and they were up under the National Board of Health. So just imagine what the National Board of Health represents, and to think that this is where you should be the most protected and be able to live your healthy life with their help. Right. But actually, they were doing the opposite. But this was at that time, again, post World War II, during the Cold War era, and some time after that. But before until Pruitt-Igoe actually came down. Yeah.
Damien was talking about some dioxin kind of related things. Russell Bliss, if you're a St. Louisan, you may remember that name. He sprayed dioxin out at Times Beach, and Times Beach no longer exists because they dug it all up. And also what was going on for the Manhattan Project, a lot of the radiation and radioactive waste was stored in North St. Louis and then shipped out to the airport area and was in just barrels. We talked about that, Coldwater Creek, and how it's all dumped now out at the Bridgeton landfill out there and is contained. This is what he's talking about here. And the movie's going to be, it's free, and it's tonight.
Yeah.
At where's it going to be and what time?
It's going to be 7:30 at Washington University. At 7:30 Washington University, please come. I would love everyone to come and check out this documentary, because this is the target demographic I made. This is a passion project. These are the people that's included in this documentary are family. I can tell you a little bit how I came about this documentary.
I was going to ask you.
Okay, well, I'll wait. I'm sorry.
Damien, how did you come about with this documentary?
Oh, wow. Now, listen, that is an amazing question. Amazing question. So I came across this to do this documentary by my grandmother, who's also included in this documentary, Sarah Modella Bournes, who was an activist her entire life, worked with Lutheran ministry with the reentry of people who are, if you're a family member, say hypothetically one of your family members are in jail or something like that. Most of the time the power of attorney went to the grandmother or aunt or uncle or some other family member, and her job was to make sure that person who helped that child with the process of one family member being in jail and also have some semblance of a regular life with whoever was awarded. She took care of those whole things. So she took her life. So she was engaged politically my entire life. So what happens is me and my grandmother, how we used to communicate with each other, she used to send me, my grandma ain't texting nobody usually at the time. So she would send me letters. And most of the time these letters were including just gossip about the family or what's going on, and some mail clippings on sometimes. So this time she sent me a news clipping from the Post-Dispatch speaking about Dr. Martino Taylor, her finding. They did a blurb in the Post-Dispatch. She sent it to me, and I read it, and I called her, hey, what's going on? She said, yeah, this is the neighborhood that I was in. This is where we grew up at, this community. And I was like, oh, wow, I had never heard of this. So I started, doing more research and finding out what was going on, and it really disturbed me that this thing happened in my community, in my neighborhood, from where I'm from, and happened to my friends, families, and fellow St. Louisians. I started to doing our documentary and just took off from there. But it all started with my grandmother and us talking and having conversations about this. And she told me after the fact, once I got into the document, she said, I knew exactly who I was sending it to, and I knew exactly what I was doing. So, yeah, she knew that this might have been something that would have pulled me, because it really just blew my mind when I realized what actually happened. And that you can do this to the people at the time we're in the most vulnerable situation, because Pruitt-Igoe was in a complete deterioration at the time that they did this. And if you know the history of Pruitt-Igoe, the housing complex, you will know that it started off with great intentions. I don't know if our listeners can't hear my air quotes. See my air quotes, but they were great intentions that it started off with, but then rapidly it deteriorated, especially after it became less, when it became desegregated, because it was segregated housing at first. It was the Pruitt side and the Igoe side, and the Pruitt side was named after a Tuskegee Airman, and the Igoe side was named after a politician that said that let's say maybe have a questionable history.
Yeah, push some buttons. And
yeah. So
had a hand under the table.
Exactly. So it went on, but after a certain period of time, they removed all the resources from that, and the people of Pruitt-Igoe was responsible for maintaining those complexes and things like that. It was
a big complex,
huge complexes, huge.
It fell like within 10 years.
With the thing is that it was the first of its kind.
Right.
It was the first housing community being offered subsidized by the government. So they sold this as the shining house on the hill. So the most people that was in St. Louis, especially before the Great Migration, where we came from the South and migrated up for economic opportunity and upward mobility, we all navigated to locations where we feel that it would be great for us, especially from the heinous atrocities that we were escaping. Right. So when it got to St. Louis, we were in downtown St. Louis, where it was in squalor, some elements, dirt floors, elements of that we were still pulling together and starting our life. But then here we come with, here's a shining castle that you can live in with elevators and indoor heating, plumbing, and things like that. And some people in the documentary, once you watch Target St. Louis Volume 1, you will understand that some people had their own reservations about it and didn't, but the majority of the folks, they went in because they was like, hey, this is what we came up here for. And then for that to happen, is very interesting. So
much there.
You're listening to St. Louis in Tune with Arnold Stricker and Mark Langston. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of Mill Creek Valley. And hey, we've got this wonderful situation over here for you. Go move there, because it wasn't that, I'm saying this now, it wasn't that we wanted to provide a wonderful situation, is that we wanted to move a group of people out of downtown or move a group of people to another area, which Alana's going to be talking about in Kinloch, and what happened in Kinloch and other areas here in Brentwood, what happened out in Chesterfield, many things like that. Historic black communities are decimated, or population of black communities are moved from one place to another because land is valuable to business owners or to governments. And so let's push them out. You're laughing. Am I touching the right buttons here?
You're touching on the right. You're touching it. You're 100% correct. But it's so interesting because what happens, especially, let's say talk about St. Louis, like in redlining and things like that. So what happened is that, okay, so we don't want our tax dollars to go to everybody, which include, I'm just going to say, people of color. Right. So what happens is that they moved, this is back then, they moved out to the counties, the suburbs, and also put into places like redlining where we could not get out in these communities. Right. And they took all their tax dollars and built all these little municipalities around St. Louis that's taking away the money that should be there to build up St. Louis, greater St. Louis City, and build our school system to be stronger, to build our fire departments, to build all these things that should be happening with these tax dollars. But no, they pulled them out, made their own little subdivisions, and then told people of color you couldn't move there, and built on their school systems with their tax dollars, and left the city to decay. So that was part of the reasons why, again, sorry, I touched the mic. So that was part of the reasons, again, when the segregation part of Pruitt-Igoe went away after a big storm that you'll find out in Target St. Louis Volume 1. After the storm, and most of the people, most of the white people actually moved out and did what was hoped and promised, and then it became predominantly African American in the Pruitt-Igoe. They just let it go, and then and that right there is creating a that's just easy. Let's just say bad situation. That's a great situation.
Nicely put.
That's nicely put. So yeah, but again, all those economic dollars are in these little bitty subdivisions, and with these phenomenal school systems that historically did not allow African Americans to participate in that system at all.
Now, if you can't make it there tonight, you can watch online. And let's say you can't watch online tonight or be there tonight. How can someone watch the documentary movie that you made?
You know what you can do? You can follow me at Damian D. Smith on all social media, and also Target St. Louis Volume 1. It's all one word, Target St. Louis Volume 1, no period. You can follow those two social media channels, because we will be updating everyone on what's going on. Because after St. Louis, we go to Toronto for the film festival there, and then we're actually talking to different people and looking for distribution deals where we can have either we're going to have a theatrical run or a online distributor, someone that'll pick it up and license it or buy it.
Now, you've been on the other side of the lens, mostly. What was the impetus to be on the 180-degree view of the lens? In other words, you're looking through the lens now. You're not having the lens look at you.
Yeah, it's a trip. It's a different skill set, a different mentality. What inspired it was this is my first feature documentary, but my last short narrative, it won. I won the Gentleman Jack Daniels Filmmaker of the Year award. Right. So we won that, and then another short narrative that I did called About That. It won the Art and Impact Award out of San Francisco. So I'm a story. So performing and acting is my passion. That's my initial storytelling.
We have another storyteller here too.
There we go. Exactly.
The
right?
medium can change.
The medium can change. So I did my theater in New York City. I got nominated for best one-man show in New York, and then I moved over to LA to pursue film and television, which was another passion of mine. It's all a gumbo of storytelling, and I made it a point to learn. I made it a point to learn everything I needed to learn. So I was a grip. So when I was on tour with a play, right? So I'm on tour with a play. So the tour that I was on wasn't consistent, like 5 months out and you back. So I'll be out for a month and I'm back in for 3 weeks and I'm out for 2 months. So within the time I was in New York City, I learned to be a grip, a swing. I learned everything you need to do and need to know behind the scenes.
Right.
I produced, I had a theater company, so I know how to get things. I'm an executioner when it comes to that type of element. I kill things, I make it happen. But the point is that I wanted to learn everything I needed to learn, because I knew that storytelling was going into writing and directing. And when I got to LA, that's when I executed that at that level. That plans, I do plans, right? So now we're on year 7 of the second part of my 5-year plan. So this is year 7 of a 10-year plan. And it's doing what it's right now, and just working towards getting everything complete. So I tell stories. That's what it is. Passion is acting and directing, because I like to control the narrative of the story I'm telling.
You have a great resume, Damian,
Thank you.
It's I see volume 1. Mm-hmm. So I'm presuming there's going to be a volume 2 and 3.
Okay.
And maybe more. I'm presuming that.
No, I can tell you. My thoughts behind it.
All right, tell
like
us
I said,
those
it's planned out already.
All right, well, you hear it here first,
Exactly.
folks.
Yeah. So volume 1 is part of an anthology series that I'm doing. So Target St. Louis Volume 1 is the first one that it starts, 50s, 60s, 70s, right, early on. So at the next one is going to be Victory High. And that's low-key Volume 2, St. Louis Volume 2. And that's a story, if you want to know. I can give you a brief little rundown if you want. No? Okay, sure. First, I have to say this.
Here first on St. Louis.
And it's supposed to be heard. It's supposed to be heard here first, because I'm shooting it in St. Louis. Again, these volumes are part of a series of stories that I want to tell in St. Louis, because I want to rejuvenate the film industry in St. Louis.
Good.
You can see, if you go to Boston, Boston has an identity, right? Because you've seen so many different films about Boston, about the people of Boston, what type of grit they're made from, because you got Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, all these people making these stories about Boston. You get to understand the people of there.
Right.
Atlanta, the same thing. You get a sense of what Atlanta is. You get a sense of LA, of course, New York, of course. No one really knows what St. Louis is to the general public. And we are a bastion of creativity. We're a bastion of dope things. And our story is rich. And this St. Louis, they would consider St. Louis to be the capital of the United States at one point. Yep. That's the level of how rich. We got the Dred Scott case, which was like started the Missouri Compromise, started the Louisiana Purchase. All that stuff is tied in because of St. Louis. The GOP is formed because of the Missouri Compromise, based in St. Louis. You see what I'm saying? So you got St. Louis, and that's just off the top of the head. It's a much deeper history. So we need to talk about the identity of St. Louis. We need to talk about the people of St. Louis a lot more. So these 4 films is what I'm going as a process, and it's going to help rejuvenate, hopefully, the film industry. So, Victory High. Starting off by saying it's a fictional story. It's fiction. I wrote it. I made it up. All right. So, because everyone I talked to got that same story in their community. They also let me know I'm on the right path. So Victory High, it's about the most successful high school basketball coach in Missouri athletic history. Air quotes again, people who ain't listening. In Missouri athletic history, coming off the heels of his latest state championship. But the issue is that this brother is a pedophile. So the story is told through the eyes of two high school students, one being the newly recruited high school basketball star and the other being the editor-in-chief of the high school's newspaper and blog. And she's dead set on taking this coach down because he molested her uncle 2 decades ago and ruined his life. So the pair team up under some devious circumstances that she dupes this player and to take on this Goliath-sized challenge of this Bobby Knight-type character coach who throws a lot of influence around. He's been around. He's hiding in plain sight. So the tagline for the film is Victory High, where winning is the best disguise. That's another one. That's our second volume. Okay. Then we have a third and a fourth volume that's already set up and wrote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
I know. I can't wait. I want to see it now.
You want to see it now? Oh, it's coming. Listen. We're still in the fundraising phase of this situation, my good people.
Right.
So if anyone's listening,
Speak on it. Go
I
ahead.
know that's
yes.
right.
So if anyone's listening again, you can follow me and we can get information. We're looking for people who would like to be a part of the project in any aspect or any way. I want to have the score from people in St. Louis. The score of this documentary is done by Kelvin Bell. This brother's from St. Louis. He's a musical director of the Classical Theater of Harlem, where I was part of a member of. And then also was on, I said Nancy Wilson. He's on tour with Cassandra Wilson. One of the Wilsons, I'm sorry. He's on tour with, this brother's phenomenal. When you hear the film, you see him and Michelle, our other musical director. This guy's amazing. He worked with Hans Zimmer, nominated for Emmys and Oscars. Just wait till you hear this movie. It's amazing. But it's St. Louis guy. So with this movie, Victory High, I want St. Louis artists. So if you're a St. Louis artist, a rapper, musician, please hit me up. Follow me. Follow Damian D. Smith. The story's already written. We're already pushing it out. We got a lot of interest. It's going to be things. So that's the second film that I'm filming in St. Louis. That's my first feature narrative. That's going to be my baby.
Ooh.
So this is Cinema St. Louis, and tonight at Washington University is at the Brown Theater. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
It is free online. If you want to watch it online, it is $5. And if you just go to cinemastlouis.com or just punch in Cinema St. Louis in the Goggle search, you'll be able to find out what's going on. And you'll also be able to find out about Elena's movie. That is the Kinloch Doc, and that's going to be tomorrow night, but that's at the Tivoli and online. So stay tuned for that after this segment is over. Damien, I'm glad you came in. It's been gas, and let's stay in touch because I'd love to know more about the other movies and the volumes that are coming out, and just follow your career, and please feel free to be at home here anytime you want.
Beautiful. I would love to. And I thank you good people for doing this. And this service is needed for St. Louis because we need to talk about our arts. We need to talk about our community. So I thank you good people for making this happen because it's definitely what's needed.
We thank you. Alana Marie, who's the director of the Kinloch Doc, is here. And you have a very engaging kind of story. And I love this. You say engaging content isn't saying what you think people want to hear. It doesn't have to include industry jargon just to sound like an expert. It doesn't come across salesy just to make sale. Now, here's the point, folks. Engaging content speaks to what you believe and trust that others will resonate with and is inclusive of your personality and your voice. I loved that. That was wonderful.
I meant it, and I meant it. Yes.
And you're a storyteller.
I am a storyteller.
When did you start telling stories?
Honestly, now that I'm an adult and I'm reflecting on just my habits as a child and really tapping into my inner child, like I started as a writer, COVID really showed me how much of an introvert that I really am. So when I was younger, I would be in my room. I would write short stories. I would write fictional stories. I would write poetry. I would write music that never saw the light of, but it would just never really cultivated as something that could be a job or a business until I became an adult. But I've always been a storyteller. I've always been intrigued by stories. I would be 11 years old watching the Lifetime channel. Really, a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evenings, I would watch Lifetime.
You're an old soul.
I'm a very old soul. Very old soul. As they say, I've been here before, apparently.
Do you still have some of those stories that you wrote when you were a youngster?
They're probably under my bed, and that's probably where they need to stay. I'm sure I do.
Now, what was that got you going about Kinloch?
Honestly, my relationship to Kinloch, other than my family being from there, but by the time I was born, my family was long gone out of the city. So I would hear my father reference the area time in and out as I was coming up. But it wasn't until I was 25 years old. I went to school at the Brown School of Social Work. I got my master's in social work. And we were taking a course about systemic racism East St. Louis by the elaborate Professor Jack Kirkland. And
Jack Kirkland, yeah.
amazing.
I went to school with his son.
He is amazing. I love Professor Kirkland. But no, we had a class, and the first day of the class, the assignment was to take a bus tour through historic Black communities, Kinloch being one of them. We went through where Mill Creek Valley once was. We went through Wildwood, Chesterfield, and of course Kinloch. We're driving through Kinloch, and I'm like, yeah, my family's from here, but I don't know much about it or what happened. Like, I wonder what happened to the city. I wonder if there is a documentary about this film. And so October 28th, 2016, I posed a Facebook status asking, is there a film about the city of Kinloch? And if there is, what's the name? And I screenshot that status now because the name of it is now the Kinloch Doc. And so I wanted to know basically what happened in this, and more so it allowed me a chance to get closer with my father to learn about his upbringing. And also between 2014 and 2016, I had a lot of family deaths. My grandmother and my aunt passed away 2 months apart. Another aunt passed away a year after that, and an uncle passed away a year after that. And these are all on my father's side of the family.
Oh, wow.
So the elders in my family who lived and thrived in Kinloch are all deceased. And then my father, who was the baby of the bunch, it was a way for me to honor him and his story while he's still alive, to be a part of telling this story.
So what did you find out about Kinloch that really resonated with you?
How it's sad how it's been overlooked and disregarded all of these years. But again, as we were talking in Damien's segment about St. Louis having such a rich history, like Kinloch was Missouri's first Black incorporated city in the entire state of Missouri. It was one of the largest all Black communities in the country. It was regarded as the Harlem of the Midwest. You learn about how many significant people came out of Kinloch: Maxine Waters, Jennifer Lewis, Dick Gregory. We share him with the Ville. The first six Black superintendents that the state of Missouri had came out of Kinloch. The first Black graduate at St. Louis University came from Kinloch. Kinloch Airfield, like Teddy Roosevelt was the first president to ever fly in a plane. And where did that happen? In Kinloch. And so for people to just drive past it unknowingly, because you can't see it when you're coming up the highway, it's literally, to see Kinloch, you have to have business in Kinloch. So nobody really has business in Kinloch, so there's no reason to be there. But for me, it's very frustrating to know that Kinloch, specifically for me because I have roots there, but it's just one of many Black community that is often overlooked and disregarded as another, again, same story, different day. But the story needs to be told for that community.
It gets destroyed because of big box stores, or it gets destroyed because of highways, or because we just want to move a population to somewhere else because that ground is valuable. I remember when driving by when 170 went through, and 170 wasn't even up there. It took a lot of buildings and homes from Kinloch. And also when Kinloch just all of a sudden just disappeared from the highway, or from the airport buyout. What did you find out about the airport buyout there?
It's sketchy. It's messy. To my understanding, that this has been in the plans for quite some time prior to the actual signatures on the paper, which is frustrating because Black people, there were only a few parts of the city that we could live anyway.
Exactly.
So Kinloch was that community, and we made a place here with the little resources that we had, and then you come and tell us, okay, you're not making the best use of this area, so we're just going to force you to go somewhere else.
Right.
They keep doing that. But specifically with the airport, there were plans to expand their runways because they were making plans to become a hub. Like international is still in our airport's name. It's nothing international about
the
airport.
We're barely a regional
Isn't that
airport.
weird?
Exactly. It's a lot of space, a lot of unused space. But they made plans to expand the runways, but it happened so quickly. And they just came in and they bought out these houses to a community that was really impoverished. Like Kinloch, they use each other for their resources, and they made do for themselves. All things fair, like they were in a impoverished community. So people are coming in with these suitcases and businesses telling you that you can live somewhere else that's seemingly better for this amount of money. A lot of them are going to take that, especially if your neighbors are gone. But what happened is they never expanded the runway. And eventually, this was when TWA was still up. TWA was bought out by American Airlines, and then unfortunately September 11th happens, and then everything goes down. So that land lay dormant for 20 years to the point where you have grass as tall as this studio. You have trees. People were talking about deers and foxes and all of crazy wildlife in suburban St. Louis County, because it was like, why did we have to move all of these people out? If you knew, or did you know that the expansion plans were never going to happen? But that's just from what I heard.
And now land
That's a great question.
has been redeveloped with, there's these warehouses like crazy.
Commercial industry.
They keep building warehouses out there.
Yeah, commercial. Over a third of Kinloch, maybe even more, is used for commercial industry. And I think within the next 7 to 10 years, that is where it's gonna. What
did you draw on for resources to, besides talking to your father? And I know you went into Kinloch and talked to some of the, I'm going to call them the elders of the community. And what are some other resources that you utilize to draw on?
So when I started, after I'm making that Facebook post, my father has an older sister, my Aunt Yvonne, who's almost 20 years older than my father. So I started with her because by the time she was an adult, my dad was still a child. And so I connected with her. She told me very early, like, Alana, I'm not going to be on nobody's camera. However, I can connect you to some people who would be very interested.
Okay.
So between October and all the way up until March of 2017, again, while I'm still a student, I'm a grad student at this time, I'm just doing informational interviews. I'm meeting with people. I'm calling people. And one thing about Kinlochians, they love talking about their city.
Right.
And so I had coffee meetings. The Kinloch ladies, they would meet at Cracker Barrel the first Monday of every month. And I just moseyed and made myself in there. And I became like an honorary granddaughter to all of these elders who knew my grandmother, who knew my aunts and uncles who were now deceased, who knew my father when he was a child. And they shared a lot of information for me, and being able to take that and research, and a lot of YouTube University, a lot of Google, a lot of connecting with St. Louis filmmakers to come and sit with me as well. Like, I have no filmmaking experience. I was in graduate school to be a social worker. My plans were to manage a nonprofit when I graduated.
Wow.
I come from, my industry has been in education. I've been in education for 7 years, specifically in college access, but I've always loved storytelling and learning people's stories, and I've always been intrigued by documentaries, and for whatever reason Kinloch just never left my spirit of why this happened, and I had no intentions of it turning into what it is now. If it never left my MacBook, I was okay, because I knew I wanted to do it specifically for my family. I had no idea that it would grow to this thing,
because it was this little, I'm going to call it a teaser.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's this full-blown documentary now.
Yeah, it was a 4-minute teaser. When I graduated from the Brown School, I got accepted into a media training program called Continuity, and I was in the inaugural class, and it was a 9-month training program. We met once a week for 3 weeks. It was free for adults who were interested in media production.
Wow.
And so the alignment, I graduated in May. This program starts in August, and it was through that program that I was actually trained on how to make a film. And so the short version was birthed through that class.
Okay.
And so that's how we got into the St. Louis International Film Fest. And from there, people were like, okay, where's the longer version? Well, where's the longer version?
Right.
I'm like, the longer version takes longer money. I don't know how to do this.
Open up your pocketbooks, folks.
Yeah, I don't know how to do this, but people were interested, and the Regional Arts Commission provided me, the Gephardt Institute at Washington University provided me a small grant. I never paid myself. I paid for my DP and my editor, who is the same person who was actually my instructor at Continuity. I kept it very tight. The team is very small, and people support. And so in April of last year, at the height of COVID, I launched a Kickstarter campaign to raise $20,000 for this campaign, and I almost didn't do it. Because I'm like, we're in a global pandemic. At the top of COVID, we didn't know like people were passing away, people were losing their jobs. It was just very chaotic. And I felt, is me making this ask for money for this project, is this okay? And my campaign manager was like, Alana, you have to understand, like, this is essential to you. And not everybody is experiencing this pandemic in the same exact way.
Right.
Like, allow people to support you. And if they can, they will. If they can't, that's okay. So not only did we raise $20K, we raised $28,000.
Wow.
In 3 weeks.
Wow.
In 3 weeks.
Fantastic.
That's crazy.
As a first-time Black female,
Good for
inexperienced
Congratulations.
filmmaker with no industry connections, just St. Louis. I love and they really rode hard to get this project out. And so all of the Kickstarter backer names are in the credits.
Yeah.
For their
Good for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good to do that, because a lot of people wouldn't even think to do that.
I almost didn't. I almost did not. I'm glad I did.
I'm proud of the community for stepping up.
Absolutely.
That's one thing about St. Louis. They are hardcore committed.
They're givers.
Yes. Yes, they are, and
Good
I'm
for
very
them
grateful
seeing
for
the
this city.
potential here.
Yeah.
The role of education has been important in your life,
Yes.
and that's reflected in the film also because the educational system at Kinloch, they had their own school, just like North Webster here had their own school. And then all of a sudden, when the merger between Ferguson, Florissant, and Berkeley happens with the school system,
Yeah.
I'll let you finish up here.
So how I often regard it, without giving too much information, because you got to check the whole
Right,
story in the
right.
film, but I always regard it as like a 1-2 blow to the community. So how I describe what is the Kinloch Doc about, it is about the effects of these two political implications on this community. You have the school district dissolution, and then you have the airport buyout. The airport buyout wasn't the biggest thing. Like the school district dissolution like paved the way
Right.
for that to even occur. So I think in 75, 76, the Supreme Court deemed it the school district unconstitutional because, of course, it was now an all-black community, not by fault of Kinloch. What happened, the city of Berkeley was developed only because the white residents of Kinloch at the time did not want their white children going to school with Kinloch.
Oh, my
Kinloch was a
gosh.
commuter suburb before it was even incorporated.
I didn't
Kinloch
even
was
know
white.
that.
Kinloch was white before it was incorporated.
Wow.
It was a black town by the time it was incorporated. And so that they fought 3 different times. They went to the courts 3 different times on the books as an incorporated city. And so white residents were like, no, we don't want our kids going to school with your kids. We don't want black leadership. So they created the city of Berkeley. That is the only reason why the city of Berkeley exists.
Wow.
Which is
really?
now majority black today, which is crazy. And so what they did, they ended up creating the Berkeley School District. Took those resources out of Kinloch to pour into the Berkeley School
Sure
District.
they did.
And that's how that happened.
There's so much wrong with this.
And yes.
Who
and
allowed that to happen in the first place?
And the Berkeley School District doesn't even exist anymore. They
anymore
knocked the high
either.
school down,
Yeah.
the junior high, and
Right.
everything.
And it's like I said, same story, different day.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that
wow.
was during the time of the late 30s, early 40s, around the time of incorporation. So the Kinloch School District had an opportunity to have about 25, 30 years, over a little 30 years of its own, because it had one high school. So you had Holy Angels Parish. My father actually went to Holy Angels, and you had a few, public schools, and then the big high school. So when they decided to dissolve the school district and bus those kids out to neighboring communities, i.e. Ferguson, Florissant, that was the primary one. So my father is a DSED kid. He was in the 7th grade when he got bused. He told me it was very ironic because the movie Roots had just came out. So the racial tension
All right.
is thick. And at the time, Ferguson and Florissant are majority white municipality. But when you think about the detriment and the impact of a city like Kinloch, where those students could walk to school if their parents didn't have cars,
Right.
they could stay after school, they could be a part of after school activities, your
Right.
leadership, your lunch ladies,
Yes.
your bus drivers, your
Yes.
superintendents, your school board, all look like you. You're
Yeah.
going to another more well-funded resource municipality. If you are a superintendent of Kinloch, you're not going to be a superintendent of Ferguson, Florissant.
All right.
You're going to be a subordinate.
Right.
If you have any head roles in Kinloch, you're going to be a subordinate
So
in
true.
this neighboring,
Right.
municipality.
So true.
You already have an established school board. So what representation do these students of Kinloch have for an already established school board?
Unbelievable.
You have connections that the teachers lived in Kinloch. They knew who these students were. They knew who these
Right.
families were. In Ferguson, Florissant, they don't.
No.
So then people talk about that Ferguson, Florissant had more resources. Yes, but that's only a small part of the success of a minority student. You need that social aspect, and it is crucial. And if I feel like my peers don't want me here, if my teachers don't want me here, they're tolerating me, and I know that.
Say it. Come on.
How well do you think I'm going to do?
Right.
Hurt me.
Come on.
If I had potential basketball scholarship over here, or athletic scholarship, or
Right.
a band scholarship, my dad was telling me about they used to have an Afro ball and how they had to fight to bring that into the Ferguson Florissant School District to honor, black culture in this community. And so that was the first blow. But then what happens in Kinloch is now, what incentive is there for people to move to Kinloch if there's not a school district? I have a 12-year-old. As a mom, I'm not going to move somewhere there's not a school. Even if I don't send my child there,
Right.
the fact there's not an option. There's no incentive for further growth in that community because
Right.
there's no investment. When the children leave, so does everybody else.
Wow.
I was talking about what I said a lot. I get really passionate about it.
You should be
mad.
passionate about it. You should be passionate about it.
Yeah.
As I was looking in the information, the very first line here, Kinloch is a town on life support. Fewer than 200 citizens. And what I find here is that they don't necessarily want people to Let's leave us alone. We've been messed with enough. Leave us alone.
And they have, and that's part of the reason why I approached it very carefully, because the media's relationship to Kinloch is horrid.
Absolutely terrible.
And so they're very protective. The people who still live there are very protective of the space, rightfully so, because people with cameras only come out here when there's somebody going to jail or when there's a body being found. Nobody's really covering the cleanups or the neighbors helping each other. Like during the time of producing this film, I was a part of the Kinloch Reunion Committee, and we put together the first annual Kinloch Forever Festival. There was no news coverage there at all. There was no news, and not to say that we didn't reach out. There was no news coverage there. It was a beautiful day, no violence, all community, people, cars down the street. It was an amazing time. No news coverage there.
And that's the kind of event that really should be broadcast.
Yes,
Precisely.
they should be celebrating what they're doing.
Yes. Yeah. But
I didn't know there was only 200 people left in Kinloch.
Maybe.
If that many.
Yes.
I didn't know it had gotten that low in population.
To tell you how...
And then there's no... Services are...
there's no revenue generating businesses, to my knowledge, in the area.
There are some churches there.
There's the city hall, there's a volunteer base, fire station. There's no police station because the police services were contracted out. But as far as grocery stores or gas stations, they have to go to neighboring communities like Ferguson and Berkeley or Hazelwood.
And then they're doing good things and they're not celebrating them.
Well, and one of the good things they do is they have a wonderful, I'm going to call it a community garden.
Yes.
That's you can see off of 170. It's underneath the power lines.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for a long time. And so, folks, if you're understanding where this area is, if you're not very familiar with the St. Louis area, between Highway 70 and Interstate 170, at that corner there, it's on that northeast corner, and the area of Kinloch. And as you go towards Berkeley Road, the area on the right-hand side, on the east side, is Kinloch area.
And what a downtown area. It used to have a hustling and bustling downtown.
It was a huge, and even when you were talking about before Highway 170 was put through there, just I think about, Washington Park Cemetery.
Right.
My father and I were talking about this yesterday of like, how many bodies are probably still under that highway?
Oh, yeah.
And just in life and death, Black people in Black space is never regarded or revered enough to preserve. And I'm like, they would never do that to Jefferson Barracks.
Hurts my heart.
They would never do that to Jefferson Barracks. But when you have a cemetery like Washington Park, which a lot of Kinlochians are actually buried there, World War I, World War II, veterans are buried there. There's no preservation of Black life from birth to death.
So where do you go after this particular documentary? Are you going to document, I know it burns within you because of Kinloch.
I know.
Are you going to talk about other historic Black communities that have disappeared?
I want to. I would love, I see it. I envision like a series. Of course, the Tulsa, race rights anniversary was this year. And so that was the huge wave. But the Rosewood, Florida's, or the Seneca villages in New York, there's a statement that my father said specifically in the documentary, like there's a Kinloch everywhere. And there literally is.
That's correct. I
would love to do that. I'm stuck on St. Louis. Like even in the city of Berkeley, there are over, probably more than this now, 20 missing Black girls from that zip code alone. And when you think about where Berkeley is stationed, you have 170, you have I-70, and you have 270.
Right.
So you think about sex trafficking, human trafficking, but just for Berkeley to be very small in the amount of Black girls that continue to come up missing. And I would love to highlight that as well, because a lot of, not even just Black women, but just Black children don't get as much news coverage as they should. Gosh. And so I see that being in my future as well. But I have so many ideas brewing, because there's angles, there's national stories that are already out there, stories that have been done, but my brain is always thinking, but has anybody ever done it from a different angle? Perfect example. All of the films out about the civil rights movement, all of the films about Martin Luther King, but I'm so intrigued by his bloodline, like how his mother was assassinated at the piano at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which a lot of people don't know. His eldest brother is deceased now as well, but his eldest brother had heart conditions. His eldest brother had 5 kids, and 3 of them died from heart conditions. So I would like insight on just the family trauma outside of Martin Luther King, of what it's like to lose 2 of your children. Martin Luther King's mother was an educator, but she had to quit education when she got married, and how Martin Luther King and his sister both went to college at 14 and 15 years old. Like, these are the parts of the story that nobody talks about, because we only talk about MLK when he's at his height.
Right.
I'm interested in the people that cultivated who he was.
that made him who he was.
Exactly, and nobody talks about that.
That's very
And so,
interesting. Now, folks, you budding film people out there, you can just forget what was
don't
said.
steal my idea. But if you
It's
do,
copyrighted.
you can book me for a consultation.
We have proof right here.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So the social worker in you is kind of focused in a different direction. It's really lasered into the media and telling the story.
Yeah. When you think about it, even when you all were coming up in school as well. But film is a major tool in which educators use to teach their scholars. Like for people who may not always learn through textbooks or through articles, like, there's another way for you to learn. And so I would love to integrate more of film and media podcasting into social work programs to further enhance people's way of learning about these issues. Now, for me, I'm a visual learner. I'll watch a film and then I'll find literature on it because I want to know more about research. And I know there's other people like me who think. I just didn't know how broad the social work field was. But really, it's just getting down to the why and helping to mitigate the social ills of the world. And I choose to do that through that's the goal.
I hope you have an opportunity to talk to people before they pass.
Yeah.
And to get their stories, because those are stories that really go to the grave that need to be recorded and documented and then put together in a movie like you have in the Kinloch Doc.
Yeah.
And we've been talking to Alana Marie, and she is the director of the Kinloch Doc, and that can be seen tonight at the Tivoli 1. Tomorrow.
It can be seen online, though. It can be seen online as of today, yes.
Okay, online. And how do people see that online?
So the same way, if you want to watch it virtually, if you're not able to come to the theater, you can go to cinemastl.org. And the same way that you can link to purchase it for this, and it'll say online purchase as well. So you can click it there and you can watch virtually and be a part of the Kinloch Doc family. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film and any questions that you may have. I'm very personable, and I love, clearly, as you can see, I love talking about
these documentaries. I've always found very fascinating. I saw one on Pruitt-Igoe several years ago, and they give you a glimpse into a side that you had not thought about, and that was one of the big purposes of why you're doing this particular movie.
Yes.
Is to expose people to, hey, do you know what really happened here?
Right.
Do you know what this place was like? This was a vibrant community. This was a vibrant, interlocking community where people took care of one another and had everything they needed right here.
Yep. And fun facts, my mother is from Pruitt-Igoe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So my father's from Kinloch, my mother's from Pruitt-Igoe.
Oh,
and she used to tell us stories about living there and what it was like when it rapidly was ran down, and the point that my grandparents decided to move. My mother was 9, and there's actually a book on Pruitt-Igoe by Bob Hansman. And she had a cousin who was also 9, Kimberly Gaines, who was kidnapped and raped and murdered, and her body was left in an abandoned building within Pruitt-Igoe.
Oh.
That's my mom's first cousin, and they were the same age. Her mom sent her to the grocery store to get some milk, and she never came back. And so at that point, my grandparents, specifically my grandmother, was like, we have to go. And so they ended up moving out here to Florissant. But I have a lot of rich history just within my blood, and this specific opportunity allowed me the opportunity to even learn more about my mom's upbringing. Even though she was there for a short time, at 9 you still remember, and you would remember something as traumatic as that.
Tragically.
Unfortunately. But making sure stories like Kimberly's get told as well.
Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Extremely interesting. And folks, if you're not communicating about your background to your kids or talking to your parents about, tell me about when you grew up and where you grew up, those are important things that need to be discussed.
Very important. Just to know. Just to know.
Wow. So again, you can see this online at cinemastlouis.org, or you can go to the Tivoli 1 tomorrow. It's at 2 o'clock is the showing. Tomorrow, Saturday, November the 6th at 2 o'clock, and also online. The Kinloch Doc. Alana Marie, thanks for coming in to St. Louis in Tune.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you listening to this episode of St. Louis in Tune. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out our website, stlintune.com. That's stlintune.com. St. Louis in Tune is produced in cooperation with KWRH 92.9 FM and Motif Media Group. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.